Welcome to another episode of Bangkok ChitChat at the ClipCube Media Studios, where we try and provide you with helpful information orientated around Thailand. If you have not subscribed, please do so to help us. And if you could like, comment and share, it would be much appreciated. Today we will be talking about working from home and how individuals and businesses can manage this in a more acceptable way to follow best practices. We will also discuss what they should consider now and in the future. To help explain this, we have Peter Bull, an HR consultant and management trainer since 1997. Peter has worked for such companies as Broadwick and Associates, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and today has his own training company called DitDa, where he trains and consults to medium and large companies across Southeast Asia. So welcome, Peter.
Thanks, Andy.
Okay, so I'd just like to understand, office and work and home working. What are the pros and cons for individuals and companies?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. I don't have an answer.
That's the end of the interview then.
Yeah, the problem is it's such a new thing, and there are so many variables. So it's not a black or white answer. Right. Yeah.
So, okay. So let's just say off the top of our head about someone working from home. What sort of people are suitable to be working from home? That's probably a starting point.
Look, if we went back to last year, I don't think anybody would have asked that question. I think that many organisations, many people assume that work from home, work in the office is the same. But there's research coming out now that says that that's not the case, and that there are in fact people that are suited and there are those that are not. A simple example would be some of us get energy from external, from being with other people, from being outside the house. That's where we get energy. Others get energy from being alone. Getting up in the morning, having a run, sitting by yourself, having a cup of coffee, energizes for you for the day. So these different personalities react differently to work from home versus working in the office.
But it must also depend on the type of job you do. So, I mean, for example, ourselves, right? Yeah. Our accountant, she works from home.
Yes.
Because it's more a functional process. It's rather than where it's collaborative.
Yes.
So she'll do all the submissions, etc., from home. So I see that as a suitable job or administrative job. Yeah. Sales, for example, have always been working outside the office. You mean yes. A salesperson doesn't sell unless they're at the office meeting the client and building relationships. Yes. Yeah. So it's easier for them. But now some organisations are being forced to, because of COVID, to have people work from home. So maybe somebody doesn't want to because they want that social interaction, etc., but they can't. Yeah. How can we actually manage this process?
It's interesting that you picked the accountant and the sales, and at the top of your head, it'll make sense to do that.
Yeah.
If we take a sole accountant that works for him or herself, they work from home, they've set up their business that way, probably because they naturally, the idea of having their own space and their own entity appeals to them. Mm. But you've also got accountants. Think of accountants in big consulting firms such as Pricewaterhouse, KPMG, etc. These guys are huge. You've got a lot of accountants there that are extremely extroverted, that want to be amongst other people. So we can't just grab a job type and say, well, everyone in that job type is suited to work from home.
Okay.
They're not. And same for sales.
All right. So from the company's point of view, there's one thing is a person wants to, or is quite happy working from home. Yeah. And obviously they have, if they've got a particular characteristics where they've got discipline, etc. Yeah. For that person that maybe wants to be in the office but is working from home, do you have any tips or something like that on how they should they set up a routine, like they'll be at work? I mean, myself, if I'm working at home, what I will do is I have certain things I'll do, like when I finish work, I'll close the door reasonably firmly, and in my mind it triggers that I've stopped work. I never stop work, right? But in your mind it pretends that right, that's it. Now I will go to a different place which is not related to work, to the office. Yeah. Okay, I'm lucky I've got a fair-sized house. Yeah. Right. But you also look at the other person who is working in lives in a one-bedroom apartment. Yeah.
Yeah, with a wife and two kids.
Yeah.
Little kids that are running around the floor all the time. So that in itself could be a stressor for them.
So how what would you say to people that have no choice but to work from home? How should they manage themselves?
I think there's two aspects to it. If we take the individual perspective first, as an individual, it's really important to understand what pushes your buttons, what things motivate you, what's your preferred way of doing things. And if your preferred way of doing things is to be out, is to be interacting with others, then you have to create some way to do that. Now, there's lots and lots of web-based interacting tools, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Meet, etc., etc. You have to structure that in there so that you're meeting people a lot. If you fit in the other category where you're really, really happy to be at home, you also need to think about, well, what's my space? How am I going to set up the space? Where will I feel happy? Where will I feel less stressed? And for each person, it really, really is an individual process. For the business, it's different though. For the business needs to understand their workforce, which people are suited and which are not. And that's a different conversation.
Do you think that businesses in the future will have a combination of both, where you will have I know in the UK within the government sector this is a change, where you can work so many days from home, but you have to come into the office X number of days, especially for group meetings or this kind of thing. Do you think that's going to be a trend?
Well, if we look at our situation here in Thailand, the government put a statement out saying strongly advised, I forget the exact words, so please don't hold me to it, but it was something like strongly advised 100% work from home. And if you look at what happened across the workspace, you had one group that committed to that 100% work from home. We had another group that did shift work. So we want one person from each department or come in, as you're saying, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Then you had another group, or we have another group that ignored it altogether, and everybody's in the office. Now, this is not across industry. This is not unique to industry. It's more about the culture of the business and or the owners of the business. The future, I think, is impossible to predict. I think it's reasonable to assume that work from home will be with us for a long time. And to me, what that means is if I own the business or if I'm a leader of anybody, I need to understand my people and I need to know which ones are at risk if they work from home.
So what you're saying is the risk of productivity?
No, it's far more serious than that. Most people you speak to about work from home, they'll tell you that their KPIs are being hit, performance targets are perhaps even better than they were for many, many people. But that's only one part of the picture. The other part of the picture is the people aspect. For those people that aren't suited to work from home, there's research coming out now that some of them, it affects them quite negatively. That could be physically or even psychologically. And there are cases of people being hospitalised. Now,
how?
Because the stress is so much, and stress is probably one of the biggest killers on the planet. So if we then look at, I don't know if that's correct by the way, but that's my feeling. So if we then look at people being stressed out from a work from home environment and stressed to the point where it makes them physically ill, we need as a company to be aware of, well, who are those people? And I want to know who they are before it actually happens.
So are companies going to be looking at employing psychologists for all their staff?
No, you don't need to. You don't need to do that.
Mentally assess all the staff? Yeah.
There's some really, really good tools coming out of Brisbane in Australia. And a couple of psychologists there have done some R&D around this whole space, and they've put out an instrument that allows an organisation to check their workforce and identify those that are at risk, those that are like red, amber, green.
Right.
And pretty cheap as well. So and you don't need to be a psychologist, you don't need to be especially clever to understand it.
So, I mean, another reason you say stress, where people have been, at the beginning they thought it was a great idea to work from home, was that they didn't need to travel. Yeah. That's a stress in itself, and certainly the way I structured my business, that was one reason I structured the business the way it is. For that is one reason. So this actually helps with this change in attitude to working from home or partly working from home. That does this actually open up the pool of people that could work for you? Because now they don't travel 2 hours to get to work and 2 hours to get back, and they can work from a remote location. Is it not like everything else, changing habits, 3 weeks you get used to it? Yeah.
I think for many people that will be true. And if we talk about habits, there's some recent research out of I think it's called the London City University, from memory, and they published a paper to say that on average, it takes 66 days to break a habit, create a new habit.
Yeah.
I know there's lots of research, and the viewers can say, no, this is different. This particular theory research, which is one of the latest that I've read, is saying on average 66 days. So yes, we can look at this really simplistically and say that, well, if I have discipline, I can create a new habit. True. But unfortunately, not everybody has discipline.
Okay, so now we come back to we've got a situation where this COVID continues, and you've got the space, and you have to bring everyone back. You got 100 people, that's 200 square meters, sort of thing. It just becomes not practical. Yeah. So you've got like WeWork and some of these other shared workspace things. Do you think there'll be a movement where companies turn around and say, okay, you're working over there. I understand you don't want to work from home because you get the kids there and everything else. Yeah. So what we do is we have a contract with WeWork for all these different locations, and you can work from there, but you still have to come in once a week or whatever it is. I think that could be a movement in the future.
I think it's a really good question, and I think what it talks to is the idea of mitigating a risk.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, because really what we're saying is that work from home is here for the foreseeable future. Not every individual is created the same.
Mm-hmm.
As a leader, as an owner of a business, I need to understand that are there any people within my business or my scope of responsibility that are at risk? If they are, I want to know who they are, and then I want to put a mitigating strategy there. And I think that what you just suggested is a really, really good mitigating strategy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so within a company, some companies are going to transition back to the original state. Yeah. And within that's another change.
Yes.
So they've had their 66 days, they've adjusted their habit. Now they're going to have another 66 days to go back to the original. Yeah. So with that, you were changing work processes again. Yeah. Or maybe we're still adopting it, but they're now in a box. Yeah. In the office as opposed to a box at home. Yeah. How should companies prepare for that?
Yeah, let me share two stories. One story is I spoke to a young lady a couple of weeks ago, and she said she loved working from home. Now she's back in the office, and people are so noisy. So she went out and purchased a pair of headphones. You know the ones that block you?
Sound cancellers,
Sound cancellers. She doesn't plug it into anything. But she just dangle on the floor. And she said, it's wonderful. She said, I can see their lips moving, but I can't hear anything. On a more serious note, I listened to a presentation from one of the major hospitals. I forget if it was Bangkok Hospital or Bumrungrad. I forget which one. But the speaker was one of the doctors out of their HR team, and he's really, really clever. And he shared a concept of return to work fear. And what he spoke about were bubbles. So when you work from home, you're in a bubble. And in this bubble, you create the bubble, you protect the bubble, and you know that everybody inside the bubble, because they're your family or really close to you, you know that they're safe. You know they don't have COVID. You know that they practice wash your hands, all that sort of stuff. But when you come back to the office, you're outside the bubble. And you don't know for sure that your colleagues, etc., do they wash their hands properly? Do they wear a mask? Are they clean? Are their friends clean?
Have they been vaccinated?
Have they been vaccinated? You don't know any of those things.
Yeah.
So what he spoke about was this return to work fear and the impact on intra and inter-team cooperation and trust. So the culture that was there before COVID, you shouldn't assume, or we can't assume that it's there again now, because it's not.
I can understand that. I think it comes down to the policy of the company. Do they allow people who have not been vaccinated, which in itself is a prejudice, to come back to work or not? Yeah. So if they've had their second vaccination jab, 3 weeks after that, they can return to the office. Yeah. Or Are they going to say you have? I don't even think we have the quick tests in Thailand. Yeah. But you have that test, quick test when you come in until that point. It's a very difficult situation, and then there is no answer to the best way to go forward. But there's another thing that's going to happen is all these people that had to get prepared with all the computers, all the network and everything else, they're going to have to be coming back into the office. But there probably is an older computer. Yeah. They had a PC at the office, and they got a laptop to take home. Yeah. There's going to be a glut of computers available in the market. Yeah. Okay, so do you think sort of this sort of situation of working? I know it's slightly different from the topic. With office blocks, do you think the office blocks are going to have a problem getting space sold after this? Because it is a change in working culture.
Yeah, it is. I was reading the paper this morning, The Australian, I think, and there's some comments attributed to the CEO of Wall Street. I'm not quite sure. But anyway, what he was saying was that if people could go to restaurants, why can't they go back to work? So the challenge we have, and for my space on the planet, in the HR space, the challenge for us is that there's no black or white solution here, because each business has a different culture, and each business is driven by different people that will interpret COVID and the return back from COVID differently. So if you're in the HR space, you really have to have a broad understanding, and the fundamentals are who's fit, who's not, what's our plan to bring people back, and how do we rebuild the team? Yeah,
and I think there's an additional thing. Okay, my business is marketing, but marketing, first of all, selling the brand to your staff. Yeah. And then selling it to the public, because there has to be an enthusiasm within the business, so they have to understand the brand and respect the brand and be proud of the brand. Yeah. And one of the fears I've got out of this is that that brand and that energy comes from people and people collaborating. And I don't think computers can do that. Well, you have to have that environment. Yeah, I mean, my daughter's working in a company, and I see they've got pool tables, they've got this, that, and the other stuff there. This is not a Google. Yeah. And there is a real camaraderie because of these elements, where they can mix and do something together within the work environment. Yeah? Yes. And losing that and having a computer game instead of something which is face to face. It's not the same. It's not the same, and it becomes, does that staleness effectively reflect back into the business? And it's also HR, retention of staff.
It is. Think about the coffee, the water fountain, the coffee space, the smoker's corner, all of those events where people congregate to gossip. They're really important for business. Really important for the culture that supports the business and its drive forwards. From a HR perspective and from a business owner or leadership perspective, if we can't have that, we need to find another way to replicate it. It can be done online. There's ways to do it. But as a business, I think business owners and leaders, etc., I think they really need to sit back and think, well, if things have changed, how will we attack it? Which things should we take forward from the past? Maybe they're delivered in a different way, but how are we going to do it? We shouldn't just assume that everything will be okay, because it won't be.
I think what will also happen is there'll be more sort of social activities. When people are working apart or working from home and they're coming in, there'll be social nights or something socially, like we do have our annual trip in the past, but it'll be more frequent to bring people together, so they feel a part of belonging. Yeah? I think this COVID situation, as bad as it is open doors to new ideas and people open to these ideas. So we'll see what happens. Okay, do you have any final words to advice for people with working from home or businesses preparing for people to work from home?
I think it comes back to what we've said a couple of times, and that is, as a business, it's important to understand which, if any, of my people are at risk, and if they are at risk, put a mitigation strategy in place to actually look after them.
Are there people actually there to, like, for your organisation, I don't know the answer to this.
Yeah.
But does your organisation actually provide some guidance and consulting on this, because it is particular to a particular company? Yeah.
Well, yeah, the answer is yes, we do. But in fairness to what we're discussing, there's lots of organisations here in Thailand that can do that.
Right.
As a business, the thing you need to do is you need to identify who's at risk.
Right.
And all of your HR teams, they can do that. And for sure, yeah, they can do that.
Right.
But it's important that it's not ignored. It's important that identify who's at risk and then get your mitigation strategies in place. For coming back to the office, again, it's got to be a plan. We have to accept that we have to rebuild the teams in some cases. We have to rebuild the culture in some cases. So once again, there needs to be a strategy for that.
Right.
And all of this underpins leadership, and leadership is underpinned by communication. And people have to understand that leadership isn't about you. Leadership is about you creating an environment so that each of the people that are your responsibility can kick goals. That's what leadership is about. And what I'm seeing is that there's more and more a push to bring in external support for leadership. And I think it's all because the communication is not sufficient.
So just a quick leadership coaching, yeah? Leadership is somebody who's looking at their people and leading, yeah? And coaching is basically showing them the how-to, yeah? And walk them through the process.
Now, often what happens is coaching, mentoring, guiding, instructing, directing are confused. Coaching is completely different from all of these things. A really, really simple way to think about it. In Thai, there's a saying, sen pom bang pu kao, which means a single strand of hair can hide a mountain. So the coach's job is move the hair.
Right.
Coaching assumes that the person that you are working with has the skills, has the experience, has the knowledge. So telling them how to do it doesn't fix the problem, because their problem isn't in their knowledge, their problem is here. So coaching is moving the hair out of the way, getting them to step back from the situation and see where they're going, which is different to directing, guiding, etc., etc. So as a leader, we have to know which is the right thing that I should do right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, listen, thanks very much, Peter.
Pleasure.
For this. So any questions, please add them into the comments and Peter and I will get back to you. Thank you very much and see you next time.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.